All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining Thursdays at 3, a session we're having every single week to talk about how to implement new technologies or new initiatives in the practice. I'm Matt Jensen, and a lot of you know me. I'm friends with, boy, looks like all of you. And I'm joined here with my friend, Dr. Vance Thompson. I'll introduce him properly in just a minute. Vance, thanks for joining. Just a reminder to everybody, this is a very casual session. What I've learned over the years of being, 20 years as an administrator, CEO, to now a couple years working with practices as a consultant and with industries as a consultant and as their marketing agency is one of the hardest things to do is implement things at the point of care. And so we've got team members of practices on the line. We've got friends from industry on the line that can help practices. And each week, it's crazy. Each week it gets the group gets bigger and bigger. We had 40 plus registrants for today's call. I don't know how many will show up, and that doesn't matter. It's just going to be a clearinghouse every week as to how we can do better in our roles. So when you have questions, you have a place to bring them and talk to other colleagues about them. Now, just before we get started, you can always put your questions right in the chats, and Vance and I will get to them as part of our discussion today. You can also just interrupt us. This is a casual conversation, and so feel free to just jump in if you have something that's a burning question or that you want to discuss. Well, I do want to introduce Vance properly. He and I have known each other now for 7 years, 26 years. Worked with
Amazing.
him at a marketing firm first, and a few years later, he stole me away from there. It took some convincing because I couldn't imagine my life in healthcare, and I didn't know if I'd be any good at it. But he saw something in me, and has always been a very good encourager. And frankly, Vance, you just any success and a lot of joy that myself personally and my family have had, you have a lot to do with in our lives. So one of my very, very best friends, and I'm happy to have walked alongside in life for him for a time. Turns out he's one of the country's best surgeons as well. So Vance, welcome. I'd say welcome to the show, but welcome to the weekly webinar we're having.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It really means a lot.
Yeah, and I don't know if you noticed the new title you were given. That's and you don't need to make a t-shirt or anything, but
It's already been made.
yeah. Well, listen, let's dive in because today it's so funny. Our team came up with the concept of the title, how to take your practice from 15% to 30% premium. And I know that, people like me who are the business side of the ophthalmology world or the practice love metrics like that. And you've never really loved measuring by that. You use a different terminology, and maybe we can just start out with you giving us your philosophy on that kind of nomenclature.
Well, yeah, and again, thank you for having me. We're talking about something that is one of my favorite topics, and professionally, what I eat and breathe, and so, ultimately, we're all trying to, make our patients happy, serve their needs, answer their goals, hopes, and dreams. And it's one of the reasons that I don't like to, sound too salesman-y, when we're, talking about these advanced implant technologies in particular, because they're expensive. And, we're trying to match the right technology to the right patient. And we still do monofocal implants, and we also do advanced implants. So I'm just not a big fan of the word conversion rate. But I am a big fan of what implant would a patient choose if they knew what I knew rate. I think it rolls off the tongue better, but definitely it's what, kind of encompasses my philosophy in patient education. I want to get to know them, and be able to give them a recommendation on, you know if it was, me with your situation, your eyes, your hopes and dreams, this is what I would do. And I want them to be able to get to know their options well enough so they can really participate in that and connect those dots. And when you see the light go off, it's really one of my most rewarding things is reducing patient anxiety and them kind of seeing the way for their permanent vision decision.
Vance, I love that, and it does roll off the tongue better. You're right. Yeah, yeah. What's the rate again? The what would people do if they knew what I knew? Rate?
Right. Right.
There's a lot of letters. I won't do the bracelet, but it's good. Now you and I over the years, because there's so much information to take in, and because healthcare can be complicated between insurance and copay and deductible and coinsurance, and all of that is complicated enough before we even get into the elective offerings. We've tried to break down the work into stages. And I want to talk about that because I think not only is it important for practices to think about their work in this way, it's a good way to actually approach any problem, anything you want to initiate, whether it's doing better at payment options, patient financing, or making sure you're communicating about the options patients have in research, or basically every problem can be broken down into a continuum like this. Maybe just break down for our colleagues here how we came up with this and why it's valuable, this customer experience cycle.
Um, Well, first of all, yeah, that this is a big production when you want to add advanced implant technology services to your practice, and it can be overwhelming. And I think it's one of the reasons practices either don't do it or underperform at it. And since I'm fascinated with this journey and am a part of a team, including you, Matt, that wants to help us be better every day, uh, we like to kind of put this stuff into categories, and we talk about the patient experience cycle. And as far as the advanced implant patient experience cycle, Matt, you created that, and I just found it so helpful to break it down into what they're learning before that conversation with us. Whether it's the website or the research they're doing online, or what they're learning from their friends, or and all of that, and then the actual learning, whether you're doing it your self, or whether you're using a third party like Navigate and others out there. There's it's such an important moment to prepare our patients for that consultation, because the last thing we need is a patient who comes in cold and they just are overwhelmed with this information, and they have a tendency to be overwhelmed even when they have prepared. And so this idea of breaking it down into pre-calling, calling, the pre-visit, the greeting, the testing, the consulting, the coordinating, the departing, the extending. We like to take each one of these categories and break them down, and wow, it's amazing how empowering it is to your team to get them involved with each one of these steps so that we really maximize our patient experience journey.
Well, it's really, really interesting the way you say that, because breaking it down into these sections, it's not going to solve everything. But what it does is it allows you to categorize the communications. And listen, there's no magic here. It's just how you segment the work. One of the things that I find remarkable is that when patients come in, the patient's kind of at the center of this continuum, right? Because all of these activities, these services that we offer are going on around them. But what happens is, a lot of times, we will all think, all of us non-doctors, that the patient will learn about their options when they're here at the consult in front of the doctor. And listen, that's good. And they should definitely learn about the benefits and risks of surgery and the implants that they're considering at that stage. But, our industry talks about how we're somewhere between 10 and 12% premium adoption, and we know that that's as low as it's ever been. It hasn't really grown much. And I believe it's because patients really aren't hearing about their options until they get to the doctor. Now, by the way, 1 out of 10 that they're adopting when they get in front of a doctor, and our costs are somewhere between, $4 and $10,000 bilaterally. 10% adoption is actually really exciting. That they're hearing about it cold and saying yes, 1 out of 10. But just imagine if those people knew more about their options and the vision that they hope to have the rest of their lives after cataract surgery earlier in this process. And that's why it's so important that we have a special way to communicate with optometry before the patient comes in, and that our phone team does have information that they can give, or that we can have a call pre-scheduled with somebody like Navigate or others. So we make sure that before they come in, they're educated to a certain level. Hey Marcy, I just wanted to let you know, Dr. Thompson wanted me to go over all of your options before you're in front of him next week because it's a lot to consider. So I just wanted to make sure we have some time to talk through those things, right? And then we send them information to their home or through an email with videos. And then maybe when they're being greeted, there's something being offered to them saying, "Hey, I just wanted to make sure you got that call last week. Also, Dr. Thompson wanted me to hand you this. You can be reviewing that during your workup before you see him in just a little bit." If we break up the work like that, patients have a fighting chance of understanding their options. And like Vance said, it's not about raising premium adoption. That's kind of a misnomer and maybe a sales approach. It's about every patient having an opportunity to make an educated decision. The bummer is when patients go through the whole process and they never felt like they were educated. They're bummed 6 months later when they're out to dinner with friends in Arizona. That's in South Dakota. People go south for the winter. And they're at dinner and everybody's passing around bifocals except one couple. And they just had this great premium implant experience. And the folks from our region are bummed because nobody talked to them about it. So this continuum really, I feel like, I mean, it could be our whole talk, Vance, just about the work that we have before us, and where it should happen along the continuum. Vance, I know that this is going to be the largest subject and a course that you're helping spearhead, and frankly that you spearheaded singly before when you were the president of the ASCRS, and now you've got a ton of people helping you with it, who are just doing an awesome job. But there's a course coming up in October. Tell us about the Business of Refractive Cataract Surgery BRICS course.
Well, thank you. One of my goals during my presidency was to bring value to our members. And having been involved in the research and development of laser vision correction and phakic IOLs and advanced implants for presbyopia and, other things, over the years, I and my partners, who I'm so proud to be one of, we have doctors come to visit, and it just seems over the years they were wanting to watch technologies and techniques, and it's transitioned to this, boy, the business of medicine is getting to be more and more of a challenge, and how do we navigate this in this environment of reducing cataract reimbursement and those types of things from Medicare and third-party, vendors. Um, and it's been interesting to just see, just some of the frustration that has happened in medicine that isn't just in ophthalmology. When you look at a practice like ours, where there's a lot of high doctor and employee satisfaction, where we have this hybrid of, third-party pay medicine and, cash pay medicine, and it not only, leads to happy patients, it leads to a financially healthy practice. And so I remember, thinking about the ASCRS, annual meeting, which I think, like the Academy meeting, or, some of the most amazing, learning meetings, along with some of the other meetings in our world that go on. I'm just a really big believer. But if I just look at the ASCRS meeting, it was very heavy clinical, surgical, and very small amount of business. And I said to the ASCRS, how about we do a meeting that would kind of flip that on its head? It'd be 90% business and 10% the surgical pearls of what we do to optimize patient joy and refractive cataract surgery. And they liked it. and we called it exactly what you said, Matt, the business of refractive cataract surgery. It's become known as the BRICS course. And we did
Mhm.
the first one last September in Dallas, and the next one is October 3rd to the 5th in Chicago. And I'm super excited about it because we had a great turnout, we had great industry support, and we had users there who, not only got to learn from the people teaching, but the people and practices that participated in it, literally donated the resources that they worked for years, whether it was slides to educate their, you know, patients or their referring doctors or their team, or if it was patient education materials or, forms and, on down the line, the resource library that was donated because none of the doctors get paid to do this course. This is people who are passionate about passing this on to, our profession. We had people that were participants that said, this has doubled and tripled my, comfort and conversion rate, if you will. There, I use the word I don't like using. Um, and but it just was really powerful to see the impact the BRICS course had. And I think that this is a course that's going to continue to keep helping practices build that confidence. That's why we had doctors bring their implementer and they'd have a champion in their practice. So it wasn't just the doctor, because we know what happens. Doctors go back, they're busy in clinic and surgery. But if they bring, a team member or two that's going to, catch the fire or already has the fire and is going to go back with some of these new ideas and implement them, it can have powerful influence on, the practice, you know, uh, joy in delivering to patients what they want and the practice financial health.
Well, that's a great overview, and it's why we're having a conversation like this today. Is there's I think folks need to know there's resources out there to do better in the form of advanced technology in cataract surgery, and it's not about necessarily the adoption rate. It's that whenever somebody is around that 10% adoption rate mark, it's not that it's about the rate, it's just that the rate is evidence in my mind as to whether or not they're being educated. I believe that if patients are reasonably educated about their options, practices will kind of naturally settle in at more like a 30% adoption rate. And that's just after visiting a bunch of practices. It's not scientific. It's just that I think that people on average are willing to, part with their hard-earned dollars when they understand the benefits and risks of going standard versus advanced. And when someone tells me they're between 8 and 12%, I wonder if somewhere along the line the patient isn't getting educated as well as they could be. And so the resources for these kinds of things is and how to train your team and bring them along is really important. Now, Vance, I should have said this at the beginning. This is an unsponsored meeting we have every Thursday, right? There's no industry involved. This isn't a mouthpiece for Askers or ASOA. There's industry types, there's practice types, there's doctors on this call. This is just for us to kind of have a place to come together and talk about how we all get better at our craft. So it sounds like we're making this plug, shameless plug for the BRICS course, but I do feel like it's real practice change.
Well, and I do too. And I think, to tell you the truth, I think one of the great things about it is here, there's great, doctor meetings out there, and entities like the ASCRS, and there's great business leader meetings with entities like the ASOA. I just don't think we do enough meetings together.
Yeah.
And, you find that the doctor part of delivering advanced cataract surgery, um, in my opinion, really isn't that difficult. I think the business of it is difficult because
Mhm.
when you look at that patient experience journey, there's a very small amount of that is actually spent with the doctor, you know, and there's a lot of it spent with your, technicians, your phone team, your, billing and coding, and your counselors who are educating on the financial aspect and whatever extenders you're using as a doctor. But I could go on and on and on how this is, just it's a team effort, and you get the business types and the doctor types in the same room has been one of the keys to the brick success.
Really, really well said, Vance. And I want to, we do something on this call that we don't do on normal or other webinars I've been a part of, which is, I'm going to call out on people who I know are on the line here and just ask them some questions. And as I do, I just want to remind everybody, you can go through to the chat to ask questions, or you can just pop up, unmute yourself and ask. We've got one of the best implementers of new technology here on the line today. Just an absolute wonderful surgeon, but also one of the finest human beings. So while you have Vance here, let's get some questions coming his way. Carrie Jacobs, I just saw you joined. First of all, it's nice and validating when you join a call that I'm on. It makes me feel like, oh, good. We pass the test of the some of the best administrators around. And so thank you for joining. I just want you to talk about, because you're a faculty member on this BRICS course, but you also do a lot of training and teaching with your team members. By the way, one of your team members is one of our favorite former team members, Tawny. Remember that, Vance?
Yeah, send her back.
No, not going to happen. We've converted her. She's a true Minnesotan through and through.
She
Yeah,
loves paying taxes, Vance.
yeah,
She loves
yeah.
taxes.
Tell
Hey,
her hi, and thanks for taking good care of her. Yeah.
yeah.
One of my
Carrie,
favorite humans.
how do you get buy-in? You come back from a course, you've got all these new materials now, new forms. I mean, where do you even start?
Yeah, that is, I think, the biggest obstacle. There is enthusiasm. There is excitement about we're going to go, we're going to do this. And then what happens? Nothing. Because, like Dr. Thompson said, you get back into your busy practice and things just keep moving. So the biggest challenge, I think the biggest hurdle is change management,
Yeah.
right? So you have to get the buy-in, you have to start with the top, like here's what we want to do, and then you have to know how to bring it forward. Staff education, like you said, Matt, is really the key, but you have to invest in change and getting everyone on the same page with you, or it's not going to happen. And managing the emotions of the change, because we've always done it this way, we're doing just fine. How do you take it from here to here? It takes effort, right? And so
Yeah.
I think if that doesn't continue to be fostered and grown and built, then it's going to keep sliding. The rock is going to keep sliding backward versus being pushed forward.
Yeah, Vance, give us some tactical ways that you have found are successful, or at least that are worth it when you're bringing something back to your team. Like, how do you get them engaged?
Well, first of all, you need to take the time to educate. So I think it always starts there. And I have a tendency to get the most nervous talking with, my team. So I prepare. And, just like I'm going to be teaching a course, I'm preparing slides. And so I think that that's the most important thing, because knowledge is power. And, since I work with a lot of young people that are very purpose driven, it's amazing what it does to, make the team culture be the best it can be when you are teaching them and helping them realize that they're experts at their area, and how do we, optimize, this patient experience journey and whatever particular technology that we're going to be, learning about. So you got to, take time. You got to, close clinic for a little while. You got to prepare, and then you work through it together, and it's not easy, but I'm highly motivated to meet my patient expectations. For instance, I know that one of the top three reasons for falls and broken hips in our country is 80-year-olds and older looking through bifocals going downstairs or over uneven surfaces. A lot of younger cataract patients, have the agility to, be able to navigate those situations. But, they hope to be 80-year-olds someday or older. And they love learning about these options. Not everybody, enjoys wearing bifocals. And so to give someone the reading range of a 32-year-old for the rest of their life and still have 20/20 distance vision versus the reading range of an 80-year-old and be in bifocals or trifocals, I do both situations. I'm a big supporter of both situations, but I want patients to understand their options so that I feel, like I'm setting them up, for life. And so when you talk like that to your team, they catch the bug and they want to learn about it, but you have to prepare and then you have to choreograph. And so starting with the patient experience cycle, like, Matt, has presented here, and then, having a session dedicated to each one because they each have their own little cycle to them or their own little packet of information and things that you learn and implement. And so breaking it down into its pieces and empowering your team not only helps your practice, but it helps your culture.
Vance, you said it, and I gave you a softball because I wanted to ask you how tactically do you get your team to buy in? And you said it. You close clinic and you meet about it.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, one thing that you're particularly good at
You
is
said
having,
it faster.
what's that?
You said it faster.
Yeah, I did say it a little faster. It was rushed, a little salesy, but but it is always kind of your gut reaction. And I think the take-home message, one of the most important ones from this call is you want to do more interventional glaucoma, meet with your team.
Mhm.
You want more people to understand how to use patient payment options, meet with your team. Want to have a better team culture, meet with your team, meet with your team, meet with your team, meet with your team. And until they have everything out of your head and in theirs, there will be too much of a distance between what you intend them to do and what they actually do. And you've always had a really good investment in team and training, Vance. And I like that you said that you're nervous over your slides more than you do for your big national talks. I believe you. I don't know if many of you read the story that we wrote a while back. It was in CRS Today, and it was about our holy huddles. We had been having huddles every single day. And when we built the new center, our team members were far flung and so far and wide that I was getting bummed out within a few weeks of getting into our new amazing space in Sioux Falls that I was getting bummed that not everybody was coming to the daily huddle every day. And so I had messaged Vance and said, listen, I think I'm getting frustrated. I prepare for these huddles and people aren't coming. And you're off the hook if you're in front of a patient or things like that. But Vance said, well, you can take a role, and that's what I offered is I'll send around a sheet. People can sign in. I said, well, I think it'll accomplish what you want, and that people will show up, but I'm not sure it will accomplish what you intend. Um, what I would challenge you to do is create a huddle that's so amazing that no one would ever want to miss it. And so, I mean, Vance, I know you do fuss over your slides that way, and the team knows it, and so do others who hear your talks. And I think that as leaders, we have to remember our audience isn't out there; the audience is inside the team. If we can craft things in a certain way where they see our best, they will give their best to our shared patients. Question that came through the chats just now. This is from our friend Joel Gaslin, Vance. Do you ever create a quote project champion on the team to help drive change so it feels more peer to peer?
Yes. So who's going to own it? I think
Mhm.
it's a really powerful thing, and it also is because there's a lot of projects, and so you can end up with a lot of different owners, and that's how you do leadership development and make your team feel valued. So I love the idea of having a champion.
And I think, Joel, on that, one of the things that I found is that just like we used to have the role of LASIK coordinator, refractive coordinator, right? We're finding now that there's almost like an implant coordinator, especially with the augment of RLE. Um, I think the practices who are initiating interventional glaucoma the best are the ones who have an internal champion for that. I hear practices doing that for keratoconus. See, it's so important, especially with those rare diseases, sight stealing diseases, that we never lose track of that patient, not because they're a good lead, like the refractive world, but because we're the key to them not losing their vision, right? So I think having somebody deputized inside the clinic is really important for categories like that. And I think definitely premium IOLs are one category. Vance, talk us through, I'm transitioning now, and I'd like to hear for everybody on the line, if you can just maybe pretend I'm a patient. Give us kind of how you present options. I mean, I'm
So
in for a cataract exam, and how do you go through the general conversation?
yeah. So first of all, I like to review what the findings were, their exam and Matt, we found that, a couple things could be contributing to your blur. One thing I'm confident about is you have a cataract, and we're going to talk about that in a second, but we also tested your tear film, and since we know that is a very important part of your vision. That tear isn't there just to moisturize your eye. Right where the air meets your tear film is the most powerful focusing element of your eye. In a little bit, we're going to be talking about this cataract and an implant. Your tear film is about 75% of the focus power of your eye, and the implant is about 25%. So together, they focus light. And so, but for the moment, let's talk about this cataract. And a cataract is a cloudy lens, and your lens sits right behind your pupil. And in your younger years, before the age of 40, helps provide some zoom. And then, we lose that zoom, and we either, drift into readers if we didn't need glasses before that because we can't see up close, or we drift into bifocals. And so that aging of that lens, that lost its zoom continues and it starts to become cloudy. And that's why we're here today. Your lens is starting to create blur. You're having some nighttime issues. And so you have a stiff, cloudy lens. It's lost its zoom, it's lost its clarity, and you're trying to figure out how to take care of that. And in cataract surgery, we replace your natural lens that has gotten stiff and cloudy with a clear lens. And that clear lens can do one thing, provide clarity and not any reading range, and put all the reading range into, glasses. Or you can address both issues. You can replace both things your lens used to do. And that's one of the big decisions you're going to have today. And I am probably talking a little bit more than I usually do, but they've already heard this multiple times. They've heard it on the phone. They've heard a little bit from the technician. They've heard it from the optometrist who has seen them before me. But if I'm seeing them before the optometrist, I want them to understand that their lens used to do two things, and they can replace one or both of those things. And I also like to understand, whether or not they want to do a lot with glasses after cataract surgery, or do they want to do a lot without glasses. And I have a tendency to see a crossroads at that point. Once they understand their lens did two things and they can replace one or both, and do they want to do a lot with glasses or without glasses? And I'm amazed how many people want advanced implants. To me, it's way more than 50%. Who wouldn't want to replace, everything? Uh,
Hmm.
but the main two reasons that they don't is either they can't afford it, or their eye, just isn't healthy enough and meant for it. So in my practice, about 40 to 45% of my patients will do an advanced implant. And then the rest are typically doing a monofocal implant. I haven't yet talked about, once they choose an advanced implant, how I describe that journey. And I don't know if you want me to do that right now, Matt, or
I
not.
do, I do, Vance. I want you to hold for 1 second though, because I want to really emphasize the two things you just talked about. One, why is your vision blurry now with your age? That was the first part. And you can replace one or both of those components. Two, do you want, and this is the most, I consider this the money, slide, the big take home question for patients. Do you want to do as much as possible with glasses after cataract surgery or as much as possible without glasses or contacts after cataract surgery? The questions over the years, we've tried to create all these decision-making trees, but it's boiled down over time to just that crossroads. And I think if we take home that, to our teams, to our talk tracks, a variation of how you might say it, that's really the crux of the offering. Um, and then the details come from there that you'll get into next, Vance, which is okay, now that you've decided to do advanced implant technology or standard implant technology, here's what you can expect. Go ahead with those next steps.
Yeah. And so I do like to emphasize to the people who say they don't want to invest in advanced implants. They can see a lot without glasses at a distance now. They're in readers. They're just not satisfied with their distance vision. They're like, I'm fine with readers. I'm just going to do what my insurance pays for, and then I won't need glasses at a distance, and I'll just need readers. And I think that's a big misperception from patients. They think cataract surgery is more accurate than it is. And so I like to emphasize to patients, number one, what you can do now has nothing to do with what you can do after this. And so if you think that you're automatically going to be 20/20 and just need readers, I want you to understand there's a few variables, and one of them is, if that lens, we call it the effective lens position, sits a millimeter closer or further from your pupil than we estimate, because we have to put in an estimation where we think that lens is going to sit as far as its distance, I say from your pupil. Now we know optically it's, from the nodal point, but I don't use words like that. But where your lens sits, it's going to be just fine. It's its new home for the rest of your life, but you may not have that zero correction 20/20 vision because of that new home. And you combine that with this incision that creates astigmatism. You may be 20/30 or 20/40. Maybe you're going to be 20/20. We all know patients who do a traditional implant and don't need glasses. And so if you go into it with the idea that, hey, I don't want to invest in advanced implant technology, I want to try to go for 20/20 distance and just wear readers. But if I don't hit that, I'm okay with glasses, then you're going to be fine. But I just think it's important for these patients to understand what they're getting into, because so many of them think it's just a turnkey operation because they've heard it almost elevated as far as the process from their friends. But let's say it's someone who's now, going to do a multifocal implant. They want to go for spectacle independence. I like to tell them, it's typically a three-step process. We're going to do the fancy implants. And if you heal into the 20/20 crisp, that, we're doing the math and calculations, the surgery for, then everything's, your, your journey is going to be a lot shorter. But I want you to remember there's, a healing process. And so basically you're the variable. And so if you don't end up 20/20, you're not going to be happy until I do a fine tune at 3 months. A lot of people don't need that fine tune, but if you go into it with that expectations, I have a lot less chance of disappointing you. That there's a little capsule, that is right behind your implant that can get hazy, and you've heard about it in your education. It's not unusual. We need to do a laser opening. Or sometimes we find out your tear film is bothering you more than we thought it was, and you're going to
Mm.
need that treatment. And every now and then, these things we call floaters are bothering you more than we thought they were before surgery. And so I consider the first 4 to 6 months us working on optimizing your image to crisp 20/20. But then after that, the part of this implant that gives you the reading range of a 32-year-old for the rest of your life creates a halo around lights at night. Expect it. Don't worry about it. It's part of the process. Having the honor of being a part of the FDA monitored studies of, you know, the vast majority of these implants, what we found in those studies is patient satisfaction was good at a month, good at 3 months, and quite impressive at 6 months, and really impressive at a year. And so what I like patients to understand is after we hit 2020, whether it's right out of the gate or whether it's 4 to 5 months down the road, there's 3 to 6 months of your brain adapting to your new optical system that we call neural adaptation. So the first 4 to 6 months are my job to optimize the image as much as I can. And the second 4 to 6 months is your brain's job to optimize the image as much as it can. And at the end of that journey, you're going to have some of the world's most sophisticated optics in your eyes and be able to enjoy that for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's really powerful when you talk about all of that, the expectations that they might have in their aftercare. And I think one thing we can all do a better job of is helping them understand what they should come to expect in that month, 3 month, 6 month, a year. And I like the way you set that up, Vance. The other thing that I've heard you talk about, by the way, I'm really glad you mentioned the 3 points. It's a three-step journey with any implant, three-step journey, right? There's the procedure, there's the fine or the potential of a YAG, and then there's whatever you're going to do for a fine tune. Fine tune might be glasses,
Right.
but it's the same 3 steps for a standard implant as it is for advanced technology implant.
Well, and even a light adjustable lens, I mean that process is, condensed a lot earlier. I can start that fine tune a lot sooner, but you got the implant, you got the fine tune, not unusual to have the egg, and then a little neural adaptation.
Yeah, that's great. Just as a concept, I like everybody to understand the way you talk about it, and you don't do it with every patient, but especially patients who think that the cataract surgery that they're going to receive in standard is going to be spectacle free. I like to just imagine that people will almost be guaranteed reading glasses after cataract surgery. Like you'll be in glasses of some kind after cataract surgery because of what you call absolute presbyopia.
Right.
What does that mean?
Well, we all know that our loss of near is gradual and it happens from age 2 on. And I like patients to understand this great reading, isn't, something that we, lose all at once. It happens gradually. And then we pretty much, don't have much for reading range at age 75. But we do have these aberrations building up in our natural lens. And the most common one is spherical aberration. Spherical aberration extends the focal point or creates depth of focus. So sometimes, patients aren't having to lean on their bifocal as much as they thought at age 70 because of the spherical aberration that has been, present and growing in their natural lens. So they lose accommodation and they either, but sometimes have built up some spherical aberration that is affecting their low light image quality, but helping their bright light reading. So when you take someone who either has a little bit of accommodation left, like a 62-year-old cataract patient, or you take someone in their 60s and 70s and has spherical aberration, and they're, not sitting there talking to you in the exam, looking through their bifocals like 80-year-olds at church do.
Mhm.
I like to remind them that when I make your optical system so clean with a single vision implant, you have the reading range of an 80-year-old. You don't have any accommodation, and you don't have any of those aberrations that extend depth of focus. And if you don't mind going into, basically three range glasses that we call trifocals or no line bifocals, you're going to be just fine. But if you do mind that, you are going to have, an adjustment. And so I really want them to understand this idea of the absolute loss of reading range with the typical monofocal or single vision implant.
I love that. And I like the concept of absolute presbyopia, Vance, because because of the word. I mean, it's absolute. It will happen. You'll
Yeah.
you'll be removed from any ability for near vision accommodation as part of your standard cataract procedure, no matter how good you're doing now with how you're cheating your way through it. Well, listen, we've covered a lot of ground and we skipped a couple of questions for our time. I just want to make sure that everybody who has a question has had a chance to ask it. I've got a lot of friends on the line who might want to ask. Anybody have any more questions for Vance or myself on how to um, engage their team in a way that can help increase patient education and adoption? I see one question in the chat here from Stephanie. Hi, Stephanie. What are some best practices for patient education prior to their first visit? Good question. What do you think, Vance? What are some good examples?
Um, well, so this is one of the reasons that I love the internet and I, love AI, and I love when people go to Chat GPT and learn about this stuff. But it's also important to have a great website, and I think it's really important to have good pre-experience communications. And, you know, to our phone team is busy. I mean, they're rocking and rolling, answering, patient questions and answering needs and doctor questions and doctor needs and so to really get a personalized service, I've actually been using a company called Navigate because they have these navigators, that are 100% committed to that moment as much time as my patient wants. And we have dreamt of developing this internally, but it's like hard. I mean, we're busy. And I suppose if we could wave a wand, we would love to have that developed. And so we've chosen to use an outside service, and it's went really well because they send us the results of the conversation, and we get to still do our part and still be high touch, high feel on our end. And it's been, really a breath of fresh air because, you know, you just don't know everything that a patient is spending time on with regards to their pre-preparation. And so when you have someone filling in those gaps before they come in, it sure makes the process, happier. And Matt, I think at some point in time, because at the beginning of the program, you talked about how it's so smart to do this in bite-sized pieces to patient education to prepare them for that, lifetime vision decision. I think that I'd like to figure out for us how to quantify that and study that and look at post-op patient satisfaction and compare it to, how they were prepared versus coming in just,
Hold.
didn't do their work, coming in cold. Um, but those are the things we do, and then but we do prepare our team well, and we do have a great front desk and greeting experience, and they're even asking about what preparation was done, and there's gaps that can be filled in. I mean, we have handheld things that they can be learning from while they're waiting, and then the technician is putting their finger on the pulse and giving us an idea of this one's, just hasn't done anything, or this one is such a pleasure, or they're giving us cues, and then we have them see an optometrist, and it's worked really good in my practice because I do a lot of surgery, and so to have another doctor seeing them before I do, and then I go in with my touch points, but the happiest patients, and when you talk to the doctors that see my patients also, are the ones who had that pre-experience call. And right now for us, it's using an outside entity to do that.
Well, Vance, a couple things I like about what you said. One is, I mean, if anybody doesn't need to outsource those kinds of conversation, it's you and your team. I mean, you're world renowned for having high touch, right? But to be able to recognize that there's things that could be done even better while your team internally is busy, I think is a really that's remarkable to, I mean, for everybody to just pause and say, listen, even the best seek outside consulting, right? I'm a big believer in consultants. Vance has always said he's a big believer in consultants. Same thing with outsourcing these kinds of services until you can build something better internally. That's important. The second thing is other practices that I hear of, Stephanie, was it Stephanie? Yeah, Stephanie. Some of their ODs might call, they might be the ones to call a few days beforehand, right? The idea is that somebody somewhere should send some kind of information or make some kind of contact with a patient before they come in. And Vance, is it just the people who you think would be interested who should receive those calls? I mean, if you know they're a farmer from, the middle of nowhere, certainly we can save some time and energy by not, we don't have to educate everybody, do we?
Yeah, we
Sorry.
need to get everybody. Yeah.
It's
So,
yeah, it's
yeah.
informed
So
consent.
yeah, no, we need to get everybody, and because for one, we're all created equal, and you'd be amazed how many of those farmers, want it. And I think I wanted to add, one of the things that so, the other day I wanted to play was it Snow White, where the um, the queen did mirror, mirror on the wall,
Yeah.
and so I wanted to do that with our patient experience. So I went to Chat GPT and I said, I didn't say mirror, mirror on the wall. I just said, who has, the best medical experience in the world? Because I wanted to learn from them. And I was embarrassed with the answer it came up with Vance Thompson Vision in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And the reason I was embarrassed is I'm not satisfied with our experience. I'm very realistic about it, and I think I'm a part of one of the best teams in the world. They can't do more. I mean, they'll continue to push every day, but here we are, really good at this. And even the mirror on the wall talked nicely to me, and I still outsource my patient education for advanced implants.
Great,
And
great
I
point.
I do value the word consultant, but I value even more the word specialist. Because when someone is specializing at what they do, and so when you're using, some of these outside consultants, uh, outside specialists that are spending time with your patient, and they're not waiting to go see another patient exam. Like, I mean, the optometrists I work with I think they're some of the smartest in the whole wide world, but they're busy. And so to have a specialist giving a patient that time they deserve, you just can't underdo, I'm sorry, you can't overdo patient education. You can definitely underdo it.
Yeah.
But you can't overdo it. And just like we've learned, Matt, of what someone learns from you, they, forget, what is it, 70% of it. And of the 30% that they remember, half of that they remember wrong.
Hmm.
And so the only way to improve those numbers is repetition. And that's where we try to set up these touch points that you talked about in the beginning of bite-sized repetition before this lifetime vision decision.
Yeah, I like that, Vance. I love the word specialist. Great, great use of that. Carrie, I want to call on you. I know you've got something to comment on here, but Peter, with your question, Navigate comes to these calls. A couple of them are on this call, but their website is navigatepatient.com. Navigatepatient.com. And I will say in full disclosure, I am an advisor to them, although that's not part of this session. I just want you to know that as part of any bias that might come through. Here's some more bias for you, Peter, because you also asked about marketing agencies, and it turns out I have one of those too. Um, And so you can go to mendjoinmake.com or mattjensenmarketing.com, whichever is easiest to learn more about our services there. There's other great ones in our craft as well. But of
I
course,
set you up for two plugs there. You're welcome.
I know, so dirty, so
It's
dirty.
a
Great.
covert operation.
That's right.
Oh, Carrie, bring us home.
Thank you. Well, Dr. Thompson, you actually mentioned a really key point that I was going to bring up about retention and how patients need those touch points because it's so much information that you can't retain. And we've been doing patient pre-education in our practice for going on 5 years, and it's helped to the patients come in more well educated. They have an idea of what they're interested in, but it just really helps set the tone and introduces the patients to your practice as well. I believe completely in if outsourcing and using the experts as well, but I do think also that there is an opportunity to have that continuity of your brand if you're able to and have the resources to develop those experts within your practice, even if it's in conjunction with supporting from an outside company. I do think that there is a great value, but beyond that, make sure the patients are getting pre-educated. Completely agree 100%. It really has upped our game tremendously.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Carrie. And the thing that I know is that the further that I get away from the actual front lines of where the patient interacts with the team, the less I understand about how much the team members have on their plate.
Mhm.
And so while I imagine them being able to just focus on that, I also know they've got responsibilities now to the business office that are new for pre-registration and pre-authorization and for measuring our marketing spend by asking about where they heard about us last and on and on and on. And it's a lot, right? It's a
Yeah,
lot.
you have to
Um,
invest in people that are 100% dedicated to it.
Yeah.
exactly. Everybody, first of all, thanks for so many great questions. I hope you're enjoying these sessions. Vance, you made this so special today and so valuable. We want to plug the Bricks course that Vance and Carrie are putting on in October. And please go, please bring your team. But I also want to just ask you, if you would, if you find value in this session, we're not getting anything for this. But ask your friends and colleagues to join us when you see it on LinkedIn or you see the email, forward it to some people. We think that we can do a better job of implementing technology and building better team culture by sharing our pearls and opening up conversations with one another. And that's what Thursdays at 3 is all about. So you can register for the Bricks course here. Also, next week, it'll be the 3rd of July. We'll be joined by Cade Wilcox. He's the CEO of Boost Patient. A lot of you have heard of them. They do lead follow-up, and they do it partially through just an amazing dedicated team and partially through some artificial intelligence integration. Close friend of ours and really love his offering. Biggest thing we can do in ophthalmology to increase our bottom line, uh, pick up your phone when people call. Sounds simple. We've just never been good at it. And so some of the basics, I think, are what are going to save the day for our future. Listen, thanks for spending an hour with us. We've created this session to create space for change. That's why it's called margin, creating a margin of space for growth. Vance, you're the best.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me be a part of this. And appreciate all you do, Matt, for our profession.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon.